Welcome back, and we are at Charley's at exit 238. Trey Perry, head coach of Mount Juliet, is with us, and don't forget that Charley's makes this program possible. Charley's at exit 238, home of Free Pie Wednesday. Trey, thanks for being here. Mount Juliet Football, there have been some changes. You've got some new guys on the coaching staff this season. They've got some new responsibilities. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
I'm really excited about our coaching staff and the changes that we made. We have to think outside the box a little bit. I heard Coach Harp talking about his staff and being excited about that. And, you know, any program, any coach is going to say it starts there. And then when you get into the numbers that we're into, it's hugely important. I've talked a lot to, different coaches in different sports. And a lot of times, even though if it's a basketball program, baseball program, you're talking about 3 or 4 coaches compared to maybe 14 or 15. But when you're talking about 140, 150 kids, your ratios are still sort of, challenged, I guess is a good way to put it. But, yes, very blessed. We picked up Jonathan Parks from Cane Ridge, was our first pickup. And he's been successful there as a head coach. And then just lately, Greg Abner, and he's our defensive coordinator now, and Greg's been head coach himself. Matter of fact, Greg coached Jonathan once upon a time, so there's a connection there. And I guess probably should mention, too, that Levi Brown was elevated from quarterback's coach to offensive coordinator in December, January, but it was an easy decision on that, and he's been great.
For folks that might not remember, Levi Brown wore that black headgear, played at Mount Juliet, played collegiately, and was a record-setting quarterback at the University of Troy, had a couple of shots in the NFL, and is a guy who knows that spread offense inside out. Will he be running the spread that he played in, or will it be kind of a Mount Juliet version, a flavor of that spread?
I think he did a great job with marrying in, of course, the offense coordinator wasn't very good last year, but
that was you.
That was out of necessity.
Okay.
But I think he did a really good job marrying in what we were trying to get done last year with some of the things and concepts that he did do at Troy, and actually use some of his old film. He's really close with Tony Franklin and some of those guys that he was with at that time. So he gathered up some of his stuff in the winter and started putting on a huddle, for our guys to look at, for us to look at. And so we used some of the same terminologies last year, but then we sort of, some of the lingo that he brought to the table. And mainly it's route concepts. We want to be up tempo. We want to go fast. And, so that's sort of the flavor for everybody right now. But when you do that, you have to be, fairly limited in your language. You can't say a whole lot. We're signaling things, but
because the clock's running.
That's right, clock's running, and I wanted to. Last night they did a really good job, but we got to, when we do our officiating crew, I'm going to start looking for people that's the most athletic umpires and white hats so we can set the ball and go.
Who'd you scrimmage last night?
Clarksville High School.
And you went on the road. You went up to Clarksville, right?
Last year we did that. They came back to us this year.
Okay. How did that go?
Really well, and we needed it to be honest with you. We'd had 2 work days leading into Clarksville. We worked the station camp last week, and that went well. And then we went to Spring Hill on Tuesday night. That was a follow-up from them having come to us in the spring. Tom Trachetta, that was on staff with us in 2012, is the head coach there, and I'll plug him right now. They are doing a tremendous. If you want a dark horse 4A team, I think that's one of them right there. Their quarterback is outstanding. I've been in it long enough now to say, and we played against Juwan Jennings last year. This kid's the real deal.
Is he the one that's going to Louisville?
Originally, but I think he's had such a good offseason that he sort of backed off his commitment a little bit because some bigger horses are coming around. And
bigger than Louisville, that's
pretty solid, right. And I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with Louisville. And as a matter of fact, it was good for us in the spring because they came out and they really looked at him. They were courting him, obviously. And their O-line coach liked a couple of our kids, so he called the quarterback coach and said, hey, I need some help. 2 guys ended up at the scrimmage, and then he came back the following week. But back to what I was talking about with our scrimmage. Yeah, last night went well. Last night was good because it was game type. We got to actually get the kicking game into it. Now, we still did 15-minute running quarters, but it was down in distance, and so we got to finish drives and not get cut off at 10 plays and those kind of things. And I'm sure it was good for Clarksville, too, to just really, get into that part of it, because you want one of those. You don't want to get into week one not having run through a kickoff or not having tried to get to a block point on the punt block or something like that. But it was good for us last night. We got great work in, and the weather was a little bit better, so it was a really all-around good night for us.
We talked about style of offense, but I know with all football teams, it starts and finishes up front with your offensive line. You feel good about that bunch, don't you?
Excited about them. Tate Matthews this morning and I were talking on the 104.5, and he asked me about them. He knows that we're excited about them, and I mentioned that we did not have a good night Tuesday. It does start there, and so if we're not getting off the ball and we're not finishing blocks and those kind of things, then so goes the offense, and it didn't go well Tuesday, and so we challenged them. But here's what I like about them, Tommy: they challenge each other, and I said that to Tate this morning. I have not seen a closer positional group of people, and 4 out of 5 of them are juniors. But Kalani Smith, our senior leader, he sort of sets the table for them. And, I got on social media this weekend and saw that they were on the Ocoee doing a whitewater rafting trip together and just decided to do that. Now, the running joke on that is they actually got all in one raft. And I feel sorry. Big raft, maybe not ever going to be used again, but yeah.
We'll talk about Kalani. Now, he's a guy you've got playing at center. Had he been a guard previously?
In the past, mm-hmm.
Now, and you have done this in the past. You've moved good linemen into the middle and play center. He's the captain of that offensive front, isn't he?
And not only that, but our team, we do team captains at the end of the year. And our team decided that he was the team captain last year, one of our 2 captains last year as a junior, which is a really special honor, as a junior. And he's unselfish. He wants to be where it's going to help us the most. And he did play guard. But since his transition to center, when next level people are looking at him, they project the same thing. They really like him at that position. He's high IQ, and he can make checks at the line and do all the things you want a center to do.
A couple of big tackles in there for you, too.
Very excited about both of those guys. One thing that you reminded me of a minute ago when you talked about us moving guys around, when you do 2 platoon, yes, it's great because you hopefully you can keep the tempo up and you can go faster and you're better in the fourth quarter and all those things. But the one thing that makes it really difficult about 2 platoon is depth. And so what you have to do is maybe if you're not pulling them from the defensive line, they got to come from somewhere. And so we really challenge our guys, once they master a position, learn the guy next to you. It's not going to hurt to be able to at least tell him what to do, or in the worst case scenario, go in for him if there's an injury. And our 2 big tackles, we've actually been using them a little bit inside as well. And, it's good for them and their recruitment for the future, but, of course, more importantly, it's good for us.
Offensively, have you settled on a guy at quarterback?
Well, yes and no. I think we've settled on what we want to do. Games changed so much in the last decade. You can do multiple people, and Spurrier sort of introduced it, and people thought that was crazy, but it's more norm now. Joey Hayes is going to be our quarterback as far as he's a game manager. Last night was a perfect example for our fans of how Joey Hayes will play football. He gets us to the line quickly. He knows the offense. He can read coverages. Third and mediums, we're picking up first downs because he's throwing it to the right spots. But we can use, I'll mention 2 other guys, Trey Pruitt and Aiden Raines. And Trey and Aiden aren't going to stand over there on the sidelines with a water bottle. I mean, we're going to use them in the receiving corps, obviously. But they both are capable to come in, and you got your Wildcat packages. And so we're going to be able to utilize them to run the football, too.
Defensively, how are the Bears going to look? You have been an even front team for the last several years. Will that still be what you're doing? We'll
stay with it. Of course, bringing Coach Abner over. Now, he had been a traditional odd front 3-4 guy, and we can move to that. Our defensive ends have given us – I'll say this about our defensive front. They, to me, are the surprise of the whole offseason. Coach Tim McKee, their coach, D-line coach, played here locally at Cumberland, and he's just done a tremendous job with those guys buying in. And sometimes it's hard to get them to do this, but we literally have 7 or 8 guys that's playing 4 spots. And and they roll it in and roll it out. And so, going back to what I was saying, if we want to move to odd, we can do it because we've got the right kind of people that can play defensive end, but they can also stand up, get in a 2-point stance, and be an outside linebacker too.
Secondary play has always been important to you. You played back
Yes,
there. Talk about the guys that are going to be on the back end of your defense.
The biggest thing about the back end this year that I think is exciting is how long we are. We actually this week experimented with Justice White is really the heart and soul of our defense, a senior leader that's got a great story based on how hard he's worked in the weight room, and he's gone to a lot of camps, and he's actually picked up a couple offers. But Justice is sort of the prototype of what we 6'2", 210. But we decided Justice likes making a lot of plays. Now sometimes at defensive back that's scary. So we've actually moved him inside, and he's done really well with that transition. And colleges think he's going to be an inside linebacker. But in doing that, it gives you a little more speed, and it allows Tony Thompson, the guy that played inside last year, started against Oakland in the first round of the playoffs as a freshman at linebacker. So if you're going to cut your teeth, that would be
I'd say that's pretty serious, right?
So
there.
he's actually going to go out and play a little strong safety for us, and Zach McConnell, our free safety, has done a great job of quarterbacking the defense. But really, Tommy, across the board, it really is 6'1", 6'2", and I tell them all the time we need to be good technicians. I'm going to be hounding them about their stance because they are a little bit taller, but in the good part of that is you don't have to be perfect. I mean, if you're close and you're making that throw hard just by your height and being able to get up there and, get the ball at highest point.
A lot of defense is being where you're supposed to be
Right.
based on what the offense shows you. Alignment, reading your keys, getting to where you're supposed to be, and getting a lot of people to the football.
Especially in the 4-2-5. The only year we went away from it in 2012, my thing was I started to see the concept of the spread, and I was worried about us lining up.
Yeah.
Because the 4-2-5, TCU does it better than anybody. But what they do is they figure out ways to align to win is what they say, but they're going to put you in positions where they're going to be plus half a man or plus a man. And that's all you can ever ask for on the defensive side of the ball. But we've gone back to it. We've worked hard on it. Film study's a big part of it, but our guys are doing it. They're picking it up and doing a great job with it.
Kicking game, complete flip from last year. I think you lost all those guys that you had, snappers, holders, kickers.
We did get the snapper back,
Okay.
but that was a mid-season thing. Chris Harper had been a really good snapper, but he played so many different positions. Jordan Fryer, Coach Chris Fryer,
Okay.
girls basketball coach's son, came in, won the job there, so he's back. And then we've got 2 new specialists in Josh Mitchell and Jacob Bailey. And I would say Jacob played a little bit his freshman year. Late in the year, we got an injury, and he came in and kicked the last 2 games of the regular season his freshman year. And then he had an injury himself last year. But last night was his first real night to, test it out. And so far, so good.
Gallatin is your season opener, the 21st. And for Mount Juliet fans, you talk about, being in a new region and the Super 32 and all that. But when you see those Green Bay Packers-style helmets, the blood starts to boil for some of these Golden Bear folks. That's been a long-time rivalry and what a great way to start the season. You're at Gallatin to get it going.
Yeah, I called Mark early on, and I said, if we can make this happen, we got to do it. It's got to, not just for the community, but for our kids, because we're not going to have them in the district anymore. But it is a great opportunity, and, the best thing about it when you're playing somebody early like that, that's not a district game, you can it's a measuring stick for you, but at the same time, it's going to be great for crowds. We're both 0-0, so everybody's got high expectations. Being from Sumner County, I have tremendous amount of respect for that program, and then just being in that stadium. I've done it since I was a kid, and Calvin Short had me on the sidelines to be a manager, 3 or 4 rounds deep into the playoffs. But it'll be an important game. It'll be a fun game. But I think the biggest thing we have to look at is our first 3 games are on the road, and that's no small task. But we've got the right leadership in place, and this is not a surprise to us. We've known about this for months, so we've talked about the importance of making sure game day prep is exactly the way it needs to be. You can't discount the value of managers and trainers when you talk about those things, and making your travel plans, and that's why you go on the road and scrimmage people too, because everything is in preparation to make sure that you're at your best. And if we can get through those 3, at least we get to come back and play some home games after that.
Trey, thanks as always for the time. We appreciate it. Have a good rest of the preseason. Best of luck when you go to the Wave Yard on the 21st.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it.
All right, Trey Perry, head coach at Mount Juliet, with us here on the O'Charley's pregame show. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more from O'Charley's at exit 238.